In this episode, we move from analyzing risk into deciding what to do about it. That decision stage is called risk treatment, and it is where security becomes connected to real business choices. Once you know what asset is affected, what could go wrong, how likely it is, and how serious the impact could be, the organization still has to choose a response. Not every risk can be eliminated, and not every risk deserves the same amount of money, time, or attention. Some risks should be reduced quickly, some should be transferred, some should be avoided entirely, and some may be accepted after careful review. This is why business impact, risk appetite, residual risk, and management oversight matter. Risk treatment is not just a technical activity. It is the process of making informed choices about uncertainty. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first treatment option is risk mitigation, which means reducing the risk. Mitigation can reduce likelihood, reduce impact, or improve the organization's ability to detect and respond before damage spreads. If weak passwords create a risk, mitigation might include multi-factor authentication, MFA, password managers, better monitoring, or stronger account recovery controls. If a critical server could fail, mitigation might include backups, redundancy, patching, monitoring, and tested recovery procedures. Mitigation does not always make the risk disappear. It makes the risk smaller, more controlled, or more acceptable. This matters because many security controls are really risk mitigation choices. Firewalls, encryption, access reviews, awareness training, backups, and vulnerability management all exist to lower the chance or consequence of harm. When you see mitigation on the exam, think reduce, not magically eliminate. Risk transfer means shifting some financial or operational responsibility for a risk to another party. The risk itself does not vanish, but part of the burden moves through a contract, insurance policy, outsourcing arrangement, or service agreement. Cyber insurance is a common example because it may help cover certain costs after an incident, depending on the policy. A cloud provider may also take responsibility for some parts of infrastructure security, while the customer remains responsible for other parts. This is an important distinction. Transfer does not mean the organization can stop caring. If a vendor fails, customers may still blame the organization that chose the vendor. If insurance pays some costs, the organization may still suffer downtime, reputation damage, legal attention, or customer loss. Transfer is useful, but it has limits. Risk acceptance means the organization knowingly decides to live with a risk. This should not mean ignoring the risk, forgetting about it, or pretending it does not matter. Real acceptance should be documented, reviewed, and approved by someone with the authority to accept the possible consequences. An organization might accept a low likelihood, low impact risk because fixing it would cost far more than the expected harm. It might also temporarily accept a risk while a larger replacement project is underway. The key word is knowingly. Acceptance is a business decision, not a hidden failure to act. If a security team finds a risk and leadership agrees to accept it, the reasoning should be clear. The accepted risk should also be revisited because conditions can change. Risk avoidance means changing plans so the risky activity does not happen. If an organization decides not to launch a service because it would expose sensitive data in an unacceptable way, that is avoidance. If a company chooses not to enter a market because the regulatory burden would be too high, that can also be avoidance. Avoidance is different from mitigation because you are not reducing the risk inside the activity. You are stepping away from the activity or changing it, so the risk no longer applies in the same way. Avoidance can be the right choice when the possible harm is too severe, the control options are too weak, or the business benefit is not worth the exposure. It may feel like the least exciting option, but sometimes the safest system is the one you never deploy in the first place. These treatment choices should connect to business impact analysis, BIA. BIA helps the organization understand how disruptions affect business functions, services, people, finances, legal obligations, and reputation. It asks which processes are critical, how long they can be unavailable, what systems support them, and what consequences appear as downtime continues. ABIA is not only about disasters. It gives context for risk treatment because it explains what the business actually needs to survive, recover, and keep promises. A backup strategy for a minor internal tool may not need the same investment as a recovery strategy for the system that supports customer transactions. Without BIA information, security teams may protect systems based on technical interest instead of business importance. That can lead to wasted effort and missed priorities. ABIA often reveals dependencies that are easy to overlook. A business function may depend on an application, but that application may depend on identity services, network connectivity, a database, a third-party provider, and trained staff. If any of those dependencies fail, the business function may suffer even if the main application looks healthy. This is why impact analysis should look beyond a single server or tool. It should ask what people are trying to accomplish and what must exist for that work to continue. The results can guide recovery priorities, control investments, and risk treatment decisions. If a process has a very short tolerance for downtime, the organization may need stronger resilience. If another process can pause for a few days with little harm, it may not need the same level of protection. Risk appetite describes how much risk an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its goals. Some organizations have a very low appetite for privacy, safety, or regulatory risks because the consequences of failure are severe. Others may tolerate more risk in areas where speed, innovation, or cost savings matter more. Risk appetite does not mean being careless. It means defining boundaries for decision-making. If leadership says the organization has low appetite for customer data exposure, then treatment decisions should reflect that. A team should not casually accept a high risk involving sensitive customer records if that conflicts with the stated appetite. Risk appetite helps security teams and business leaders speak the same language. It also helps prevent inconsistent decisions where one team accepts a risk that another team would never allow. Residual risk is the risk that remains after controls and treatment actions are applied. This is one of the most practical ideas in risk management because no control removes every possible problem. Even after mitigation, transfer, avoidance, or acceptance, some uncertainty may remain. A company might reduce phishing risk with MFA, awareness training, email filtering, and monitoring, but there is still residual risk that someone will be tricked or that an attacker will find another path. The question is whether the remaining risk is acceptable based on the organization's appetite and business needs. Residual risk should be visible to management because leadership owns the larger business consequences. Security teams can recommend controls and explain exposure, but management must understand what risk remains after those controls are in place. Management oversight matters because risk treatment often involves trade-offs. Security teams can identify risks, explain technical exposure, recommend controls, and track mitigation, but leaders decide how much risk the organization can carry. A control may reduce risk but also cost money, slow delivery, require staffing, affect customers, or change operations. Those trade-offs belong at the right level of authority. If a risk is small, a team manager may have enough authority to approve treatment. If a risk could create major legal, financial, safety, or reputational harm, senior leadership may need to be involved. Oversight also keeps accepted risks from becoming invisible. Assigned risk acceptance should not be a way to bury a problem forever. It should make the decision clear, documented, and reviewable. Quantitative risk concepts help put some risk decisions into financial terms. Single loss expectancy, SLE, estimates the expected loss from one occurrence of a risk event. The common formula is asset value multiplied by exposure factor. Asset value is what the asset is worth, and exposure factor is the portion of that value expected to be lost during one event. If an asset is valued at a certain amount and one incident is expected to damage part of that value, SLE helps estimate the single event cost. This is not perfect prediction. It is a planning estimate. The value is that it gives leaders a way to compare the cost of a risk event with the cost of protecting against it. When used carefully, numbers can make risk conversations more concrete. Annualized rate of occurrence, ARO, estimates how often a risk event is expected to happen in a year. If an event is expected once per year, the ARO is 1. If it is expected once every 2 years, The ARO is 0.5. If it is expected several times per year, the ARO may be higher than 1. Annual loss expectancy, ALE, estimates the expected yearly loss from that risk. The common formula is SLE multiplied by ARO. These formulas help compare expected annual loss against the cost of safeguards. If a control costs far more than the likely annual loss, leaders may consider a different control or accept the risk. If the expected annual loss is high, investment in mitigation may be easier to justify. These formulas are useful, but they are only as good as the assumptions behind them. Asset values can be difficult to estimate, especially when reputation, trust, safety, privacy, or customer loss are involved. Exposure factors can be uncertain because every incident unfolds differently. ARO can be hard to predict because threat activity changes, controls improve, and business conditions shift. Quantitative analysis should not be treated as a crystal ball. It is a way to support decision-making with reasonable estimates. You should also remember that not every risk can or should be reduced to money alone. A privacy breach, safety failure, or legal violation may create consequences that are hard to capture with one clean number. The numbers help, but judgment still matters. For the exam, it helps to connect treatment options to the decision being made. Mitigate means reduce the risk with controls or process changes. Transfer means shift some responsibility or cost to another party, often through insurance or contracts. Accept means knowingly live with the risk after review and approval. Avoid means stop or change the activity so the risk no longer applies in the same way. BIA explains business impact and helps set recovery and protection priorities. Risk appetite defines how much risk the organization is willing to tolerate. Residual risk is what remains after treatment. SLE, ARO, and ALE help estimate loss in quantitative analysis. These ideas all work together because treatment should match business impact, not just technical discomfort. The main idea to carry forward is that risk treatment turns analysis into a decision. You do not identify and score risks just to admire the list. You do it so the organization can choose a response that makes sense. Some risks are reduced, some are transferred, some are accepted, and some are avoided. BIA helps explain which business functions matter most and how disruption would hurt the organization. Risk appetite sets the boundaries for what level of uncertainty leadership is willing to carry. Residual risk reminds you that some exposure remains even after controls are applied. Quantitative formulas can support financial reasoning, but they do not replace judgment. For Security Plus SY0801, remember that good risk treatment is informed, documented, reviewed, and owned by the right people.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.